We live in a world where our social system is old, and our language is old, and the way we acquire goods and services is outdated. Our cities are detrimental to our health, chaotic, and a tremendous waste of energy and resources. And our politicians don't serve us. But our technology is racing forward. We're trying to adjust to the rapid advances in technology with obsolete values that no longer serve us in the world that we have today. Excuse me. What is needed is a change in our sense of direction and purpose, an alternative vision for a sustainable new world civilization, unlike any in the past. This is what we're presenting here, and we call it the Venus Project. The activist arm was organized by Peter Joseph, and that's called the Zeitgeist Movement. When I refer to sustainability, I'm not referring to sustainability for the banks, the corporations, or our obsolete social system that we live under. By sustainability, I mean the well-being of all people in a new social system that would bring out the best in their highest potential while protecting and preserving the environment. Almost everyone will prefer using scientific means when it comes to surgery. Also, what I'm talking about is the intelligent management of the Earth's resources by using the methods of science. By the methods of science, I'm referring to science applied to the way we live to achieve a more humane society for all. Almost everyone will prefer using scientific means when it comes to surgery, to the building of aircraft, to skyscrapers, to bridges, and automobiles. Over the centuries, we've developed a consensus that when it comes to matters of personal safety, we choose science and technology rather than primitive belief systems or politics, because science has been proven to work. Then why don't we use scientific scales of performance when it comes to planning our societies, our cities, our transportation systems, our agriculture, our healthcare, and so on? If science has a lot to do with what works, then clearly there's much about today's social and economic system that is not scientific, because things aren't working very well for the majority of the world's people and the environment. If they were, war, poverty, hunger, homelessness, and pollution would have been solved long ago. Unfortunately, our social structures evolved with no overall global planning or an understanding of what shapes our behavior, and if it is not, and it is not being considered today. The Venus Project wants to apply an intelligent method of planning for planetary survival. If we don't apply the scientific method to the way we live, unnecessary human suffering will continue. We have the technological ability and the resources to feed everyone on the planet, but we don't have the money to do so. Then how do we even begin to solve our problems within the methods of the monetary system that we all live under? The use of money is hardly ever examined, but let's consider it along with how much it influences our behavior and our values. Money itself does not have any value whatsoever. There's no goal to back it up. It's just a picture on a cheap piece of paper, with an agreement amongst people as to what it can buy. And I would say a forced agreement, because we really don't determine the price of things. If it rained $100 bills, right now, everybody would be happy except for the bankers. So let's look at money. Money is just an interference factor between what you need and what you're able to get. People think in terms of wanting to get a job, to get money, to fulfill their needs. But if they really thought about it, it is really not the money that people need, but the access to the necessities of life. The use of money results in social stratification and elitism. They say in America that all people are equal, but most people don't buy the kind of car or the home they want. They buy what they can afford. Most people are slaves to jobs that they do not like because they need the money. Many laws are enacted for the benefit of corporations that have the money to lobby, bribe, and persuade government officials to make laws to serve their own interests. People say that the monetary system produces incentive, but this may be true to in limited areas. But it also produces greed, corruption, poverty, and unnecessary human suffering. We really have to look at the entire picture. The monetary system is based on artificial scarcity. For example, food products are sometimes destroyed just to keep prices up. There's a tremendous waste of resources as a result of frequent superficial design changes in order to create continuous markets. This is very evident in the fashion industry. This system is based on the need for continuous buying. You and I are merely consumers. But one of the greatest wastes of resources and lives is the military. How shameful that it is one of the biggest industries in the world. The earth is being plundered for profit. It is little understood just how much our values are shaped by our monetary systems. Our values are influenced by the establishment. They create the value system within the society for their own self-interest, and they perpetuate the illusion that our values are created from the ground up with such notions as patriotism and democracy and freedom. Most important, when the corporation's bottom line is profit, all decisions are made not for the benefit of people or the environment, but for the acquisition of wealth, property, and power. For instance, if your country really cared about you, they wouldn't outsource jobs for lower wages elsewhere. Another example is that industry takes very good care of its production machines, but it doesn't take very good care of the labor. What if all the money in the world suddenly disappeared? As long as arable land, factories, technical personnel, and other resources existed, we can build anything we choose to build. We can build anything we choose to build and fulfill any of our needs. As I mentioned, money is not what people really need, but rather the access to the necessities of life. The Venus Project advocates that we could easily overcome scarcity, which is the cause of war, corruption, and aberrant behavior, by implementing a resource-based economy. This is a very different concept than anything that's gone before. It's not socialism, communism, capitalism, or fascism. To put it simply, a resource-based economy uses resources rather than money and people have free access to their needs without the use of money, credit, barter, taxation, or any other form of debt or servitude. All of the Earth's resources are held as the common heritage of all the world's people. The real wealth of any nation is not its money, but the resources and the people who work toward the elimination of scarcity for a more humane society for everyone. If this is still confusing, consider this. If a group of people were stranded on an island and they had money, gold, and diamonds, but the island had no arable land, no fish, no clean water, their wealth would be irrelevant to their survival. In a resource-based economy, resources are used directly to enhance the lives of all the world's people. If we manage resources wisely, we can easily produce the necessities of life and provide a very high standard for everyone. This may be hard to believe, but even the wealthiest of today would have a much higher standard of living within a resource-based economy. When technology and science are unleashed into society to improve people's lives without restrictions of the marketplace or patents, it would be a far better world. In the future, children would be taught to be problem solvers instead of the parasitic professions used within the monetary system. These professions don't contribute anything to the well-being of people. They'd be fields such as advertising, insurance, real estate, law, banking, politics, and sales, just to name a few. When all the Earth's resources are shared there will be no need for the military. This savage profession could easily be surpassed in a resource-based economy. These people are trained just to be killing machines. How wonderful it would be if they were trained to be problem solvers and taught how to bridge the difference between nations without violence. When all the Earth's resources are managed as the common heritage of all the world's people, the artificial barriers that separate nations would no longer be necessary. Invasion of countries purely for resource theft would be a thing of the past. In the future, instead of fighting one another over scarce resources, people will be working toward solving problems that are common to each of us, such as the risk of heart disease, or cancer, or tsunamis and earthquakes. Remember, every new concept was ridiculed, rejected, and laughed at when first presented, especially by the experts of the times. All new ideas for social betterment, including women's rights, black rights, and child labor, have always been met with great resistance. During the time of the Wright brothers, the distinguished scientists of the day were writing books exclaiming why man can't fly. And the Wright brothers didn't read those books, so they went right ahead and built the flying machine. When science and technology are applied with human and environmental concern, we can easily create an abundance for everyone. We will eventually understand that most crimes that fill our jails are a result of the need to acquire money and property in an age of often contrived scarcity of the monetary system. Children will look back and wonder why we couldn't see the limitations of this system. Thank you.
Save it. You may not want to do that later. First thing I want to say is that the world you live in, okay, that's better, is as full of shit as a Christmas turkey. All politics are corrupt all over the world, not just here. They're corrupt because if you try this, don't take my word for anything. If you ask a politician, how can you increase the agricultural yield? I don't know. How can you put an end to crime? They don't know. They don't have any idea. How can you increase transportation and lessen the accident rate? They don't know. All your problems today are technical, have nothing to do with politics. Politics was great 100 years ago, but it doesn't work anymore. There are lawyers and businessmen that have no answers to problems. I'm going to try to tell you that the language you've been taught in your schools is hundreds of years old. That makes it almost impossible to talk to one another. When you say something to somebody, it goes into their head and comes out a little different. Because language is subject to interpretation. If you don't understand that, when you open the Bible, she says, this is what Jesus meant. She says, you're wrong. It meant this. Another person says, I think it meant that. So you got the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Catholic, because it's subject to interpretation. We are thinking in terms of developing a language that's not subject to interpretation. People don't even know that that's possible. Mathematics is not subject to interpretation. Chemistry is not. When a doctor prints a formula, a chemist anywhere in the world follows that exactly, not subject to interpretation. When two engineers get together and they want to build a bridge, they don't say, believe me, this material is strong as hell. They say the torsional strength is so much, compression and tension strength. And they give specifications. If bridge building was subject to interpretation, I can assure you they wouldn't last more than a week, a bridge. So it is possible then to develop language that's not subject to interpretation. So as long as you have this language, we talk at each other rather than to each other. Let me give you an example of that. Sometimes a person says, have a nice weekend. They never say, have a nice life. Why just a weekend? Our language is so terrible and so old that we don't know what the hell we're talking about. I mean that. Now, when a nation can't get along with another nation, or some people create problems, the senators make laws. The only laws that count is natural law. If you don't get enough sleep and nutritious food, you get sick. All man-made laws are strictly bullshit because they have nothing to do with the conditions that generate aberrant behavior. They think, or they teach you, that some people are good, some are bad, some have a lot of incentive, some are lazy. All that's artificial, unreal. I want to tell you something about even serial killers are generated by your society. People that torture and rob are created by this society. Now, I'm sure most of you don't fully understand that. That means if you have two children and you play with a 4-year-old while the 7-year-old is standing there, that lower lip goes up like that. If you play with a young kid, if you have two children, you say, why can't you be like your sister? She puts everything in her place and you leave everything around and I have to pick up after you. That makes jealousy and envy in the family. A minister, a Catholic priest, said to me, I know two people from the same environment. One turned out to be a minister, the other a gangster. If environment is everything, how do you get those differences? Here's how you get the differences. If you treat one child differently than the other, you make jealousy and envy. If you pick up the baby and play with it and don't put the older child on your lap and the younger child and treat them both well, that's less of that. Somebody said to me, yes, but what about serial killers? Well, I'm sure you've all heard of Jeffrey Dahmer, or most of you. There was a guy before Jeffrey Dahmer called Albert Fish. They believe he ate 45 children. The public wanted to tear him to pieces. And I just want to tell you what happened. A psychiatrist named Wortham said, "Don't kill him." And the public didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I want to try to find out what made him that way so we can eliminate those conditions. And this is what he found out. He found out when that fish was about 8 years old, he was touching his private parts, which is not unusual. His mother was an old-time Baptist. She said, "You're going to burn in hell touching that part of your body." Well, the kid started to shake. What do you expect? "You will burn eternally and be tormented forever." And the kid started to shake like that. And the mother said at 2 in the morning, she heard him screaming. And she came into the bedroom, and the kid stuck needles in his genitals because he didn't want to go to hell. Can you understand that? He used to take minority kids in the woods and tried to cut their genitals off to save them from hell. What do you think a soldier is? He's a guy that's given a lot of bullshit about a group of other people in another land, artificiality, showing Japanese raping women, pregnant women, gang raping her, beating her up, and the guys all enlist. All nations are corrupt. They all torture. They all rape. Every one of them. You can get that from any military records or books written about the war. So I'm trying to tell you, you live in a society where they condition you indirectly. You go to school, you learn to speak, but you don't learn how to live and relate and find meaning in your own life. You become a chemist, a doctor, or a biologist, or in a narrow discipline. So the pinheads are used to make war weapons. Scientists don't exist yet. If there were such a thing as a scientist, they would ask, what makes a criminal? How does the government operate? What does it base its decisions on? So if they stay in that narrow area of photography, optics, engineering, bridge building, they don't ask those questions. So there's no such thing as a scientist. In the future, we will generate people that know anthropology, sociology, seismographs, they know the weather conditions, everything, so they can share ideas with other people. This way they're limited. That's why scientific journals never touch the system. That's where all your corruption comes from, the system that exists. Policemen, for example, walk over and say, "Where did you learn to drive? Get out of that car. Let me see your credentials. Let me see your..." In other words, they're bullies, most of them. Not all of them, most of them. That's what soldiers are. They're killing machines. We would take soldiers and send them back to school to teach them to become problem solvers, not killing machines. In other words, they're bullies, most of them. Not all of them, most of them. That's what soldiers are. They're killing machines. We would take soldiers and send them back to school to teach them to become problem solvers, not killing machines. In other words, how do you get to nations that think differently than we do? Well, when I was a kid, I was designing this system, and the thinking is talking to yourself. If I say, "I'll see you Saturday," she goes, "I have to take the kids to Aunt Minnie's. I can't make it." Thinking is nothing magic. It's talking to yourself. So I was talking to myself. I said, "How are you going to bridge the difference between nations?" I said, "I don't know." That's the most difficult thing to learn to say. I don't know. Most people have opinions about everything. You think man will ever get to the moon? Not in 1,000 years. Do you study rockets and acceleration? No, just an opinion. Everybody is brought up to have a right to their own opinion. I'm sure you remember that. Well, if you're brought up to have a right to your own opinion, if you lived across the way from me and I see 10 guys coming out of your apartment, I can have all kinds of opinions. You can be a language instructor, ballet instructor, but if you give everybody a right to their own opinion, you're going to have man will never fly, man will never get to the moon. You get all kinds of opinion. We don't want that. We want people to have access to real information, all people. And that's what the the internet is today. It's the nearest thing to democracy. But there's a lot of people who would like to control it, believe me. And if they ever succeed in taking that away from you, you won't get new points of view. So your schools are all regimented, all of them. All teachers use language like this. They look at the way a child spells something and they say, that's wrong. When you say that's wrong, there's no information in those words. Think about it. But if engineers talk to each other, they have to use a larger bolt and a washer. They go into descriptive systems. Schools do not. They give you an A. If you're born with a larger brain, with better neurotransmitters, you become a fascist faster. The brain has no mechanism, by the way, for deciphering that which is relevant. That's experience. When a fox sees a porcupine, it has no idea what it is. And it gets closer and closer till it gets stuck. Then they say it's learned. Its behavior was altered by the pain. So people say a Chinese baby, generations of speaking Chinese, they figured at one time that a Chinese baby might learn to speak Chinese a little faster than an English baby. So they brought an English baby and a Chinese baby together, and they both learned at the same speed. No Chinese baby was ever born speaking Chinese. No American baby was ever born speaking English. So people came from all over the world, and they brought ideas to America. The printing press, they brought language, mathematics. An Arab named Algebra gave us algebra. Louis Pasteur, probably most of you would be dead if it wasn't for Pasteur. We owe so much to so many nations that to build separate viewpoints is dangerous. Now, if you consider World War II, those of you that remember the newsreels where Germany was flattened out, Britain was bombed flat, and the 400 ships on the bottom of the sea, I'm talking about freighters, with manganese, tungsten, all kinds of valuable material. If you add up the cost of World War II, you could have housed everyone on Earth, built hospitals all over the world, wiped out poverty all over the world, once and for all. How stupid can you be? You look up to military with their medals. They are super ignorant people in the Pentagon. Otherwise, they'd ask, what's the cause of war? Why do people kill each other? They don't ask those questions. Yes, sir. It was the U.S. Army that dumped 65 tons of nerve gas off the coast of Miami. Did you know that? Near the Gulf Stream. Yes, sir. They're taught to obey. I don't want people that obey. I want people that think their way through things, solve problems, not put people in jail. When you take a person that's conditioned to be a criminal because they're brought up in a scarcity environment that behaves differently, if you don't know what that means, if you were brought up in Sicily and somebody looked at your sister with sexual intent, you make a fist and you whack them. Well, really, to show you how little people understand, take the Bible. Jesus, I asked the priest, why did Jesus insult God? He said, I don't remember Jesus insulting God. They taught me, they tried to teach me, that God was omnipotent, knows everything, made every bug, every planet, everything in the galaxies. And then Jesus, just before they crucified him, he looks up and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And God, gee, I didn't know that. How can a person be omnipotent? You tell them what to do. God bless America. Who the hell are you to tell God who to bless? I'm trying to tell you how stupid people are. They're made that way, of course. They're not born that way. Bigotry and prejudice is learned. So we think that some people are nice, some aren't, some are lazy, some are hardworking. Not true. All people can become creative. When you read about Leonardo da Vinci, they tell you that he was ahead of his times. No, the times were behind Leonardo da Vinci. And he associated with people who talked of gears and levers and things you wouldn't be interested in. Nobody can come forth with brand new ideas. So I was invited to express some of these values at Princeton. But I didn't want to talk to the sociology department. I wanted to talk to everybody. So I said that man can't think a reason that made everybody angry. And they all came to the auditorium rather than the sociology department. And before I uttered one word, some guy from the optics department got up. I'm talking about a traditional teacher. And he said, I disagree with you. I think man can think. I said, give me one example. He says, there are thousands. Just give me one. He said, well, somebody had to invent a camera. There was a time when there was no camera. And that's the kind of crap you're given. So I said, did you know that 1,000 years ago in China, if you were in a dark building, or the Holy Land, if there was a hole in that building, if some of you don't understand that, if you go into a barn, it's dark in the daytime. If there's a knot hole pushed out so you can see daylight, you'll see the cows walking upside down on the walls inside the barn. Anybody understand that? Will you raise your hands? That's the box camera. That's where it came from. So in the Holy Land, when the guy lived in a clay hut and you saw people walking upside down, he charged 2 pieces of silver to see the upside down world. Now in China, years ago, they cut out a girl in this position. It was called a dancing girl. It was a laminated cardboard. Now the Chinese took some bamboo paper and oiled it so the girl would cast a shadow on it. The girl was about this size, and she was in a fixed position. But if you put a candle in front of her, about 3 feet, as the candle flickered, the girl danced. If anybody doesn't understand, you put a candle behind a pencil, and it flickers up and back, the pencil shadow moves. If you put 3 candles, you got 3 dancing girls. So nobody ever invented the movie camera. The Chinese developed bamboo paper and laminated together. Or they built separate piece of paper and they stitched it together. Then they wrote the Chinese characters up and down. But in the corner of the paper, they made an indication of what subject on each page. If you happen to flip it fast, that little mark in the corner jumped around. It didn't take long for a Chinese artist to draw a bird with the wings in different positions in the corner of the page. And if you flip it, the bird does this. A piece of paper, and they stitched it together. Then they wrote the Chinese characters up and down. But in the corner of the paper, they made an indication of what subject on each page. If you happen to flip it fast, that little mark in the corner jumped around. It didn't take long for a Chinese artist to draw a bird with the wings in different positions in the corner of the page. And if you flip it, the bird does this. If anybody doesn't understand that, I'll repeat it again. If there's anything I say that you don't understand, don't accept it. I don't get it. And when the question period comes, if you ask a question, if I fail to answer it, it's up to you to say, you didn't answer my question. That's the way the Venus Project works. I want you to understand what I'm saying, but I can't demand that. So I'm going to tell you again. Man never invented anything. They teach you in school that the wheel was the beginning of technology. I'm sure you've all heard that crap. A tree fell over another tree. When the guy pulled it, it rolled. Nobody said, oh, you've got to make a wheel. The brain doesn't work that way. You experience things. You encounter things. And that's where it comes from. However, when you take a log and there's one stone in the way, that log won't turn. So the guy shaved the bark off the middle of the tree, and the ends were larger. That's hence the wheel. But nobody sat down and says, you've got to make a wheel. You can't do that. You can't make a motion picture camera unless you see things that suggest that. If you still have difficulty with that, Say a man lives in a cave. To get up a cave, if you step on the severe incline, you slip. If you look for slight flat, every time you climb a hill, you automatically look for a slight flat. And that's how you get up the hill. Well, after this guy lives in that cave 10 years, there are steps. If you step on the flats continuously. Then when he moves, he cuts the steps. He doesn't come and say, I need steps to get up there. The brain doesn't work that way. The brain works on the basis of experience only. Then they tell you there's good and bad people, lazy and hardworking people. All bullshit. And there's no profanity. Maybe if you bake a pie and drop it, she might say, fiddly-dee. And if a guy bakes a pie and drops it, he says, shit. That means, sorry, I dropped the pie. It has nothing to do with fecal matter. There are no bad words. Different people use different words. If you go to France or Mexico, they use words like merdra. And you say, oh, how charming. It means shit. There's a place in Florida called the mouth of the rat. Did you know that? Boca Raton. I live in Boca Raton. If you translate, I live at the mouth of the rat. They think it sounds very beautiful, very classical, you know. And they say that the classics produce humane feelings. Classical music, poetry, art, literature. The people that are involved in poetry, art, and literature have just the same feelings everybody else has. Jealousy, envy, all of that. So it doesn't do away with it. So we want to know, how do you change people so they don't react in aberrant ways of behavior? That means when you raise kids, you have to watch the kid, and you have to make sure that you don't ever use one member of your family against the other. And in school, if I give you an A and you a C, he says, if you got an A, you got a C. Bad feelings all through that. In the school, you never give people grades and they announce their grades in front of one another. What you do is you show children things. If they spell cat with a K, A-T, see, teacher says that's wrong. Again, doesn't tell the kid anything. We look at it and say, you know, you got most of it right. It's just this K that we change. When you say you're wrong, that isn't what I told you, that doesn't give the kid any information. Whenever you say that's wrong, if you show them how to do it, that's more effective. So right, wrong, good and bad comes from the Old Testament, all the old books on religion. And they say that try to be decent, try to be good. You will reflect your culture. If you were brought up as a baby by the headhunters of the Amazon, if you never saw anything else, he'd be a headhunter. And if I said, doesn't it bother you to have 10 shrunken heads? He says, yes, my brother has 20. Is he good, bad? No, he's perfectly well adjusted where he's coming from. That's the message. No human is good or bad. If you take you as a baby, or bring you up in Nazi Germany as a baby, where you never see anything else, all you see is Heil Hitler, Deutschland über alles, Germany above all. You become a Nazi, unless you've seen movies or traveled. So all people, let me say this slowly, all people are perfectly well adjusted where they're coming from. You know what that means? If you understand what I'm saying, they say, well, a lion or a tiger is naturally aggressive. It's natural to the tiger. You can take a lamb and a tiger, feed them both, bring them up together, and become friends. There is no natural or human nature. You hear that all the time. Human nature never can change human nature. If humans are brought up in scarcity, they save things for a rainy day. If you're brought up in abundance, you throw half the food away. So if you live near a waterfall with wonderful drinking water, nobody comes at night and fills the canteen and steals it. It's scarcity that produces theft or fear of scarcity. So what we have to do is produce in abundance, make it available for everybody. If you have access to whatever you want, you don't hit anybody on the head and take that watch away. If a guy steals, say, $200 worth of watches, say it's a third offense, they put him in jail for 3 or 4 years. That cost like 1,000 watches. So it's cheaper to give him a watch than put him in jail. Think about it. No matter what you steal, if they put you in for 10 years, you know what that cost? Isn't it cheaper to give him a house and a car and a watch? So he won't hit you on the head and take anything away? All criminals are made by culture. All prisons are cruel and stupid. They belong in the Middle Ages. You are not civilized yet. And you never become civilized because it's an ongoing process. If you don't understand that, there's no such thing as an intelligent person. An intelligent electrical engineer of 75 years ago couldn't get a job today. So I wrote a story some years ago about this nation, America anyway, getting involved in nuclear war, but 10 people escaped to the Amazon jungle. They live by airplane. And the natives there want to know how smart we are. So they give us a test. What kind of animal went by here? And the people say, went by where? Can't you see the parted grass? Oh, yeah. Which way was the animal going? I don't know. The grass is broken in a given direction. All the weeds lean in the direction the animal is going. Then they say, what kind of an animal was it? How the hell do I know? Look at the footprints in the mud. How heavy was the animal? They don't know. What kind of animal? They don't know. So they give us a test and they find out we're super stupid. That's why an intelligence test does not measure intelligence. I'm going to give you another definition of intelligence. Intelligence is the ability to extract significance from a wide range of situations. Think about it. If you can look at a situation and know what's going on, like when a guy talks to a girl, he says, you're sweet looking. I love your dimples when you smile. And he says things like, and she says, gee, thank you. And when a guy talks to me, he says, Fresco, I love your wrinkles and your bald head. Nobody talks that way to me. And when men talk to women, they talk to them in terms of their culture. So we go to bookstores today and we get a book on proper sexual behavior. Strictly bullshit. When I was a kid, I went to the South Pacific Islands to see what people would be like if they weren't educated, so-called educated. Now, these people used to swim nude ever since they were children, and I never saw a guy look at a female body. If you're brought up nude, swimming nude, he looks at the eyes of the girl only, and there's no, hey, get a load of that chick. That's in this country where you hide things. If you hide a girl's nose and say to a guy, you ever see a girl's nose? No, show him a little bit, he has to loosen his collar. Hide things. If you hide a girl's nose and say to a guy, you ever see a girl's nose? No, show him a little bit, he has to loosen his collar. If he's brought up to that. So if boys and girls swam nude in the world today, there'd be no such thing as a peeping Tom. Well, you show them a picture of a nude girl, you say, so what? You understand? We sell girly magazines in different positions. All that's nurtured by the culture you live in, a bullshit culture. Strictly that. So if you really want a better world, we have to declare all the Earth's resources as a common heritage of all the world's people. So somebody got up and said, you want to give people things for nothing, don't you? I said, yes. I said, if you're born in America, you got the radio, the telephone, the bicycle, the airplane, the automobile. None of you worked on that stuff, I'm sure. Is that right? You got it for nothing. Does it hurt you? No. If we didn't have those things, men would be pulling boats along the water if you didn't have technology. So it isn't congressmen that give you anything. Let me put it your way. If you took all the American presidents all the way back, they were all horses' asses. Very stupid individuals. because they had no substance. The same with your politicians here. Do they mean well? Yes. They're stupid. They can't do anything else. Now they say, well, what do we have to do? When I was a kid, I wanted to know how airplanes can fly on this thin substance. None of my relatives knew. So I went to the library and got a book out on the Wright brothers, but I was anxiety-ridden. I wanted to know how airplanes fly. And when I opened the book, it says it was a sunny day in May, and Mrs. Orville Wright was hanging clothing on the line. That bothered my ass no end. That didn't tell me what I want to know. The book, most of the book was sunny day in May, bullshit. Near the end of the book, they killed the pigeon and put wires in its wings and moved the wings forward and backward and long. That was information. All your school books have a lot of sunny day in May. And you have to learn how to read and scratch. So I get a lot of technical journals, and sometimes a doctor comes up with a wonderful idea. And in the book it says that Dr. Jones has 3 children, Shirley, Jennifer, and Bill. I don't want to know that. I just want to know what he did to make medicine better. But underneath that you can put, if you want to know about his life, you got that. There's so much information coming in the world today, we don't have time for sunny day in May. All your soap operas and movies are bullshit. The same story over and over again. In the future, you'll have a soap opera, but the little girls say, I want to become a social anthropologist. And Daddy says, what's that? And you show it. So that each movie that you see makes you a little wiser, a little smarter. When you come out of the movie, you have a better perspective of life. They teach you in school how to live, how to find meaning, how to communicate. How many ever heard of a book called The Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase? 1 hand, 2 hands. Okay. If you get that book, I don't sell it, just maybe you can get it on the internet. The Tyranny of Words tells you that people don't hear what you say. It goes to their head and comes out different. You say, that's not what I said. Oh, yes, you did. And if you bring people up with that divergence in language, it's hard to be sane. So we say that most people are not insane. They're unsane. Unsane means they're brought up to think that Polacks are dumb. And the best thing, you get a big Polack to clean out your cellar. And you know all Irish are drunkards. So all Jews are chiselers, and all Italians are gangsters. So you make up all those little stories, and it's difficult for people to understand other people. If you don't understand what I'm saying, if you're brought up by an Eskimo family that never saw movies, never saw anything, and you say, what do you want? You can have anything you want. The Eskimo never says a twin-engine Beechcraft. He never says, I want a stainless steel refrigerator. Because he can't say that. You can only say things within your culture. That's what I mean by man can't think or reason. If you go over to Seminole Indian and say, you can have anything you want, what do you want? He doesn't say, I think I'd like 2 electron microscopes. Can't say that. And if an Indian does they dance around the fire with feathered hat, you say, now that doesn't mean anything. He says, geez, thanks for telling me that. He gets mad at you. People can't understand things they haven't been exposed to. And schools make damn sure that you can't understand certain things. Otherwise, today they make you a cog in the wheel. He's a carpenter, he's a bricklayer, this man's a machinist. One little profession and nothing else. And that way you can use people, you can abuse them, and they don't even know they're being abused. So, people say, I believe in decency and ethics. You hear that all the time. Another person comes over and says, I'm a spiritual person. I'm sure you've heard that shit. And I say, you're a spiritual person. You don't have any locks on your door, and if there's poor people, you invite them in your home and feed them. Oh, no. Oh, what the hell do you mean when somebody says something? Always ask them, what do you mean by spiritual? What do you mean by, a person comes to me and says, I'm a member of a club of higher consciousness. I said, what does that mean? Higher consciousness. So I said, where's your kidney? I'm not sure. How fast is the blood moving to your vein and artery? I don't know. What do you mean by higher consciousness? A lot of people are as full of shit as a Christmas turkey because they really don't know what they're talking about. And all your newscasts is managed news. You get Army people and Navy people and congressmen talking about the war. You don't have social scientists. You don't have behavioral scientists on the air giving you their point of view. And a lot of people believe they live in a democracy. Biggest lie ever told. If you lived in a democracy, let me tell you what a democracy would be like. We would invite the president to criticize another country, and he'd speak for 1 hour. When he's through, I says, anything else you want to say? No. Then we invite the prime minister of the country he criticized on the air, and he gives his side of the story. Then we invite the prime minister of Sweden. Says they're both full of shit. This is how I see it. That's a democracy. But if you just got religion on Sunday, that's not democracy. If you had comparative religion, what different people believed all over the world and what some people don't believe all over the world, that's a democracy. When you got one point of view, whenever you hear the words freedom and democracy, watch out. It means you don't have it. When people are free, you don't have to tell them they're free. Now, we put up a sign, anyone can come to America. It's a free country. So the Arabs came years ago with 10 wives. They said, no, you can only come in with one. I thought it's a free country. Well, you use the word freedom, it doesn't make sense. When you say America has a certain range of behavior we permit, that would be better than saying it's freedom and democracy. You can't have a democracy unless you have equal purchasing power. So very few people that I know of live in the kind of house they want to live in. They live in what they can afford. And I don't think you drive a Mercedes, you drive what you can afford. He gets a used, beat-up Volkswagen. And he needs a brake job, but he earns minimum wage, so he says, maybe I'll get the brake job next week. If his brakes fail, you die in a Mercedes. You understand? We have signs, drive carefully, school children crossing. In the world I'm talking about, the kid presses a button, the gate doesn't open until the red light goes on, and the pavement looks like one comb inserted in the other. When he presses a button, the pavement turns up, so no car can hit a kid. Do you understand? That's caring. The rest is bullshit. Caring is dealing with a problem and solving it. Now, I told you what made a serial killer. I'm going to try to tell you, a banker, all he looks at is the rise, and he invests. Let's say you're a decent person, and he has a factory. I outsource to China, and you pay your help twice that of minimum wage. And he builds a playground for the women that work in his factory, for the children. So they don't have to go pick up their kids 10 blocks away. He can't stay in business very long if I outsource to China. So a nice guy can't make it. You understand that? Now let's say you work in the department store. You work for mates that work in this factory for the children. So they don't have to go pick up their kids 10 blocks away. He can't stay in business very long if I outsource to China. So a nice guy can't make it. You understand that? Now let's say you work in the department store. You work for Macy's. A woman comes and says, how much is that lamp? You say, $20. She says, I'll take 2. But you being a real Christian, you say, if you go 3 stores down, you get the same lamp for $10. You wouldn't be working for me very long. So you become a son of a bitch working in a monetary system. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are no good or bad people. There are people under certain pressures. Now then they say, you know, we're going to go to war with Japan because they had a sneak attack on the U.S. Or these Arabs hijacked an airplane and flew into the Twin Towers. And we say, they're terrible people. Did you ever ask any Arabs why they flew into the tower? We must have done some terrible things over the years to make that much hatred. Think about it. Don't take my word for it. Now, this is why they flew into the towers. There was a newspaper called The Telegraph in England. A year ago, about a year ago, they ran a headline, U.S. intends to nuclear bomb 7 countries, and it named them. Get The Telegraph, don't take my word for it. If you print a headline like that, what do you expect other countries to do? We said we're going to bomb North Korea, China, Russia, maybe. And on, we named all the countries we're going to bomb. That's why they're all making atomic bombs, because of our stupidity. When Oppenheimer worked on the atom bomb and Einstein, they thought the government might do what they asked them to do. Drop the bomb 30 miles off Japan and say, we have a terrible weapon, we'd rather not use it, please surrender. Truman said, no, drop it on Hiroshima. And Oppenheimer, he says, I don't want to see Oppenheimer anymore. You understand? Truman was a hat salesman. Did you know that? He had a hat store. He was a pinhead. So you look at your members of government as intelligent people. They are not. They are appointed to keep things as they are. They're not put there to change things. If you don't understand me, your buses and trolley cars all stop at red lights, passing fumes into the air. Look at your traffic now, it's jammed. What you do is you have 1/7 of the population off every day of the week. Your beaches are never crowded. Your highways are never crowded. Stagger the calendar. Very simple. This way you build new bridges, new highways, good for concrete companies. And it's good for the automobile industry. Automobiles are a lousy way of transporting people. If you don't understand that, more people are killed in automobiles than wars. So if you have difficulty with anything, we will open in 10 minutes to questions. And please, don't accept anything I say. If I fail to answer your question, say you didn't answer it. Don't be polite. Politicians say things people like to hear. But scientists say things, if everybody believes the earth is flat, they don't say, folks, it's a little round, a little flat. Then you get along with everybody. It's not the business of science to get along. If we find out that the earth is round and everybody believes it's flat, we don't say it's a little round, a little flat. We say you're wrong, this is the evidence we have. Scientists do not try to get along with people if they're honest. You understand? And when you speak to people, if you want to win favor, say things they like to hear. That the Catholics are going all to heaven. The non-Catholics aren't. I never taught my kids how to read. But I used to read to them at night. And when the book got to the most interesting part, I'd yawn and close the book. And the kids say, yeah, what happened? What happened? And I say, look, if you learn to read, you can find out. You don't have to wait for me anymore. Give kids a reason to want to read. In school, they teach them how to read. They teach them Dickie Dare and the sheep. On the way, they met a cow. Moo moo, said the cow. Ba ba, said the sheep. You fill their head with that crap, and then you want them to learn to think. They can't. So we'll take the 10-minute break, and you guys can write down your questions or think of what you want to ask.
Jacques, I just wanted to ask you, obviously there's a big gap from where we are now to where you see a non-monetary system, for example. How do you see the process of us, after awareness, how do you see the process of us getting from where we are now to where we should be?
About the transition from the monetary system to the resource-based economy. The transition will be painful. It will not be smooth, as you find out as you talk to people. A lot of people think that they project their own values into the Venus Project. They think it's a bunch of scientists. You will work in Area D. you, Area K. But I'm not interested in that. That's what your chart shows, and that's where you go. It's not like that at all. A lot of people picture robots walking around choking people like you see in Hollywood movies. Remember, Hollywood movies can't make a movie on the future. The sets look good, the spaceships look good, but the people are cowboys and Indians in spaceships killing each other with laser weapons. That's not the future. That's the interpretation they get. They get that from books like Brave New World, 1984. That's what this country keeps shoving out there so you don't look for new ideas. They say, you don't want a world where there's a technical elite. I don't either. There's no elitism in the Venus Project, technical or otherwise, except that people will learn what other people think in different countries. It's an open system. The transition, I repeat, will be painful. How long will it take? Well, Frank Capra, a movie producer, said, I can in 3 months turn people that go to church into killing machines. And how do you do that? You take American Chinese, put crooked teeth in them, and call them Japs, or you call them slanty-eyed bastards. That's the way you get people to kill. Don't call them people. Call Germans krauts, sauerkraut, krauts. And if you call Japanese slanty-eyed bastards, and if a soldier kills a lot of them, they ask me, do you think that guy sleeps well at night? He sleeps very well, because they pin a medal on him. When you drop napalm bombs on a village and burn that whole village, they put an X on your fuselage. The more X's you got, the more respect you command. So here are these guys with a lot of medals. They're killing machines. Of course, they don't know it. They're innocent. They're stupid. They're not informed. They don't read. And also, we worship the very wealthy people. And the rich man came to Jesus and said, can I enter the kingdom of heaven? He said, the same chance a camel has going through the eye of a needle. Now he meant, and the guy said, well, what do you want me to do? Well, give all the money superfluous to your needs to the poor. Now, I'm not saying Jesus was a smart guy, but in certain areas, he was. Now, the problem with Jesus is the people, at least in the Bible, say that he was crucified and he arose from the dead and he ascended into heaven. That means there was no sacrifice. Is that right? Think about it. God doesn't sacrifice anything. If Jesus never came back, he'd have to sing it and make all the Jesus he wants. You sacrifice. When you send your son to war, he doesn't come back again. Understand that? Jesus was crucified, he arose from the grave and ascended into heaven. That means there's no sacrifice. All the churches tell you, God so loveth the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that others might have eternal life and not perish. That's the bullshit they give you. But if Noah's Ark really existed, and you had 2 kinds of every animal, the boat would have to be a mile long, and who cleans the shit out of the boat? That's a big problem. So if you read your Bible and you're honest, it says, judge not, lest you be judged. So don't do jury duty. You don't know what produced the condition that makes a serial killer. Just say, I don't know, I can't do jury. The Bible tells me not to. The Bible also says, thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say kill sometimes, other times you don't have to. There's another bullshit word, and that's love. It's going to make a lot of people angry. How many of you like everything you've ever done in life? Nobody. Okay. That means that if you live with a replica of yourself, you wouldn't be together very long. Because sometimes you like yourself, sometimes you don't, sometimes you hate what you've done. So love is not constant. Even if you marry a guy, or you marry a girl, or a guy marries a guy, sometimes you like him very much, sometimes a little less, sometimes how do I get into this mess? So love is not a constant, it's a varying thing. So if you marry a guy because he has 10 qualities that you like, but after you're married 5 years, you meet a guy with 40 qualities that you like, you can't help but love anybody that you meet that's lovable. Whether you like what I say or not, I'm not concerned. I'm telling you how the brain works. If you fall in love at 16 and then fall in love at 35, it's different. Do you understand? So love is not a constant. It fluctuates. Now, I don't like what I'm saying. I wish it were a constant, but it's not. When you say Fresco designed the best city in the world, the city I design would be a straitjacket to the kids of the future. They'll design their own cities. And if you make a statue of me and put it on the city, you hold back people. There are no heroes in the future, no great people. Everybody can be a Leonardo da Vinci. Everybody can learn to think and create. It's not a unique gift. Look, sometimes the teacher said, she's a gifted artist. Well, why give her credit if she's gifted? Think about it. If she's born a brilliant mathematician, why the hell give her credit? You have to read the same book on mathematics 40 times to remember. You're the one that worked hard, not her.
So anyone have a question up here?
Hey, Jack. Just with your cities, to build a new city, you need the space to do it, and you need to be near like waterways. And most of the cities in the world now, or places where people live, are near using up those waterways. So how would you bring water to your new cities?
I'm sure you read about the floods every day all over the place. All we have to do is harness the floodwaters. That's the answer. Direct the floodwaters to where we dug big holes in the earth and store it there. We don't have a shortage of anything except brains in Washington.
All right, I'll take another question.
Any other questions?
Hello, Jacques. You mentioned at the start of your speech in regards to fraudulent conveyance of language and how we misinterpret things. Are you aware of David Windmiller's information on quantum language?
Roxy, did you hear that? The quantum language, the problem with the quantum mechanics is that many people believe that particles at great distance can move in unison without any connecting agent. The best thing for scientists to say is we've never found any connecting agent. Don't say without any connecting agent. Then you're projecting. It's so difficult for people to learn how to say, I don't know. They got opinions about everything. Some scientists think the Big Bang was the beginning. What was the day before the Big Bang? Nothing? So scientists move into metaphysics too. When they don't know the answers, they invent stories. And the worst story I ever heard is some guy lives up in the clouds, and he made a man and a woman, and he put them in a beautiful garden. And then he made a snake, it says in the Bible, that walked upright, according to the Bible. And it said, eat of the fruit of knowledge. So the poor people did that, and then he kicked them out of heaven. Slammed the gate forever. This isn't God. And if you don't follow his teachings, you burn eternally. That sounds more like a psychopath. So when I asked Einstein, do you believe in God? He said, which one? There's many different concepts of God. The Jewish God says if a man takes your son's eye out, you take his son's eye out. The New Testament says if a man punches you, turn the other cheek. It also says love thine enemy. Then how can you go to war? People don't know what the hell they're reading. Go into a church someday. You'll see people dress and say she was married twice. You're not supposed to gossip. Larry King said to me once, what do you think of Christianity? I said, it's a wonderful idea. When are they putting into practice? I've never met a Christian. One that loves everybody, is kind to everybody. Well, I say, you've got to be realistic. Then stop going to church. Stop pretending to believe in God. Because a lot of people are opportunists. They go to church as an investment. After you kick the bucket, there's something up there for you. And a religious person might help an old lady across the street, and he looks up and says, how am I doing? For credits. Now, when an atheist helps an old lady across the street, there's no reward. He does it because he feels for the person. So I have more confidence in atheists than I do in any religious person I've met. And then, if you go to India, they have beliefs like renunciation of all material things. Well, somebody feeds those people. They bring baskets of food to them. So when you don't get married, don't have children, you don't have the problems. So renunciation is easy in India. You don't have any money anyway. So there's nothing to renounce. So when people ask, like you take a guy like King Solomon in the Bible, he had 1,000 wives. Everybody respects him. Today he'd be arrested as a bigamist with 1,000 wives. What the hell's the matter with him? So all the people that you admire today are bums and insignificants mentally. Those are the people they teach you. Bill Gates, you know, a guy who has billions of dollars. If I had that kind of money, I feel I'm so obligated to society, I'd build schools and hospitals and everything else from guilt, just taking the money from people. Bill Gates is an asshole. So are most well-religious people. And nobody is good or bad, really. They reflect their culture. Next question.
Good question.
Just a question about the Venus Project and where to from here. Has there been any non-for-profit organisations approach you about piloting the Venus Project?
No,
Did you get that?
We are a nonprofit organization called Future by Design. We have a nonprofit, but we haven't been approached by any other nonprofits to work with us or to help build.
Just to go on from that, are you interested in going into alliance with not-for-profit organisations in the future?
Yes, we'd be glad to. If they identified with this direction as well. We, you know, there's a lot of activists within the society that talk about a better world, but they want to fix things within this system. And when we really don't feel that patchwork will solve the problems. So we have a specific direction. If they're interested in this direction as well, we'd be glad to work with them.
Thank you.
People use our photographs of our buildings and bridges to raise money for their own project. I don't know if you knew that. So they don't represent the Venus Project. They talk of a resource-based economy. People have lifted stuff out of our books just to raise money to start a commune of some kind. If you built a commune, say, with 5,000 people, and you farmed your own food and all that, if the system fell apart, really, which it's going to do, it's only at the initial stages now, going to be riots, mass break-ins in the markets. So if you really understand what we're talking about, they will invade your farm. If you lived in a community that was eating sustainable and millions of minorities are unemployed and hungry, they'll break into your little commune. You can't live to yourself anymore. Either we have to learn to live together in the world in peace, and the way you bridge the difference between nations is not come in and say you shouldn't have 10 wives, only one. That's you superimposing your values on somebody else, or you got the wrong religion, mine is the right one. So when you do that, you create problems. Now the way I changed the Ku Klux Klan, if you're interested, or the way I change people, I asked questions in New York. I said, what are the most backward people in the area? And the consensus that I got from most people were the Arabs that lived on Atlantic Avenue. So I said, what makes you think they're backward? They said, they still believe the earth is flat. So I said, boy, if I can change them, I got to try to change them. If you want to change the world, you have to be able to reach different kinds of people. So I found out who was in charge. This is how you work. You find out who's in charge. In my neighborhood, there was a guy named Tucker. He said he was the head of the Ku Klux Klan. First thing he said to me, "Jock, you're a smart guy. What do you think of the Ku Klux Klan?" I said, "It's a great organization, but it doesn't go far enough." I'd call him, "What do you mean?" But if you attack, they don't listen to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you act naturally, it doesn't work. My mother, like somebody said, do you don't believe in love? I said, no. He said, didn't you love your mother? I said, in what area? My mother was a racist and a bigot, so I didn't love her in that area. You really love any human being that's lovable. You don't have to love your own family if they're wrong. The Bible says, honor thy father and mother. If we did that, we'd be living in caves. When the hell do you step out, say you're wrong, Dad? We'll have no progress if you honored your father and mother. You'd be wearing furs. You understand what I mean? Hunting animals. Somebody says to me, are you a vegetarian? You know, you don't eat meat, or you eat only organic foods. I used to be a vegetarian, till I saw cancer on rabbits, which are vegetarians. I saw cancer on cows, and they found cancer on dinosaur bones. Now a guy, I don't know if you know this, we have labels we give animals, such as animal life and plant life. But there are certain plants that can convert sunlight to tissue. But when the sun isn't out, it behaves like an animal. It eats things, other plants and other animals. The Venus flytrap closes on insects. So a guy named Bose of the Bose Institute in India said, I don't know about vegetation. So he took a cucumber and he ran a needle into it. And the pain indicated 4 times more sensitive than any human being. A cucumber. And I used to think, well, the thing's a vegetable, doesn't feel anything. When I read Bose, I was confused. So none of us really know enough about life. There are vines called a telegraph vine. Communicates with another vine 5 miles away. Is it intelligent? Are we intelligent? Man puts himself on a pedestal as the greatest creation of evolution. And he has slaughtered more people in the name of God than any other animal. Man pollutes the oceans, the waves, drops bombs on cities, kills his own kind. War is the norm for man. Peace is the interval between wars. Man has a lousy record. He invented the rack. You know what that is? You pull people apart. The Aztecs, they called the wisdom of the ancients, used to cut the heart out of a guy and hold it up. The Egyptians, or the Taj Mahal, this guy so loved his wife, he built this beautiful monument. But this is what you didn't know. He killed all the architects and people that worked on that. Did you know that? Now in Salem, Massachusetts, in America, there were witch hunts. How many of you knew that?
We're going to take another
How
question.
many of you knew that for every witch you found, you got their bank account and their property? How many of you knew that? That should have been in your school books. But there's a lot of stuff that doesn't get in your school book because we wouldn't look too good. So somebody said to me, where did you get all these ideas? Are they communistic? Communism has armies, navies, social stratification, banks and money, prisons and police. We don't have any of that stuff. We have nothing in common with communism, socialism. They're not radical enough. They're too old-fashioned.
Hey, Jacques, I think we've got a question up here.
Yes.
Sorry, it's a question to you, of course, sir, and to anyone else who can help me. When you talk about language and the misinterpretation of language, when we communicate amongst ourselves and amongst other people, when you say that we will communicate in the future with science and mathematics, how does that actually work in a practical sense? How will I communicate with these people here? How will I talk to people? How will we discuss
I would suggest a certain book. It's called Language and Thought and Action by Hayakawa. That's 1. 2, Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase. How many of you read that? 2 people, 3. But Tyranny of Words just tell you how to talk to other people. Like if you see an airplane without wings, something new, you say, it'll never fly, it doesn't have wings. The proper way to talk is, I'm a layman. I know nothing about technology. How do you propose to live off the ground without wings? Just ask the question. Don't say, it'll never fly, it doesn't have wings. If you say, man will never get to the moon, well, what are you, a space scientist? You study rockets and all that? When the government said to scientists, can you put a man on the moon? First thing they say is, we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? They said, we don't know what a man can stand. So we whirl him around, and when he conks out, say at 10 Gs, 10 gravities, we know if we take off faster than that, the guy will die. Then we also know if you gave a guy a glass of water in a spaceship, if you pulled the glass away, the water would remain, form little bubbles, and go all over the spaceship. So they found out that you got to put water in a tube and squeeze it into the mouth. You understand? You can't drink out of it and go all over the place. And then if a guy is in space for 3 months, the calcium disappears in his legs. He gets weaker, the muscles get weaker. That's what they mean by we don't know. We got to put people into different conditions. When you ask an engineer, can you develop concrete so it'll hold up a 17-story building? He says, I don't know. And he works on concrete, different mixtures. Then he puts it in a hydraulic press and presses it. And if it holds up, he says yes.
I've got another question.
I remember when I worked in the aircraft industry.
Another question up.
The same thing. We put it to test. Yes.
Hi, Jacques. I was wondering if you homeschooled your children, or if that was something you advocated, given the schooling system under the present setup.
Did you homeschool your children, or do you advocate that today?
Do what?
Homeschool your children.
If you know how to raise children, homeschool them. If you don't, put them in school.
After spending like so much of your life designing like really great templates.
I'm 94.
Yeah, I know. Spending so much of your life designing really good templates for the, applying the scientific method to the way humans would live and run cities. Why do you think it is that there has been so little interest in this science? Because as far as I can see, you're really the main person in this field. What is the resistance?
Let me see if I get that from Roxanne. I'm sorry, they don't work that great.
The resistance is the vested interest in this system. They won't look for anything else until things crash, until people lose their jobs, they lose faith in their elected leaders, or they lose their homes. They're really not interested. They're not wise enough, intelligent enough, intellectually or emotionally, to look around and say, what's the matter, what's the cause of this system, and we should look for something to solve it. They're not given that information. It's a luxury to be able to think about those things. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait till it crashes on their faces. But in the meantime, there's a lot to do to get this information out there so people know there's another alternative. And it just depends on who we meet. We might be able to start a first city. We want to do a major motion picture to introduce this to the general public in a way that's palatable to them and show what life could be like in the resource-based economy, show what they're missing. People don't know what they're missing. And show how we get from here to there in the film. So any way you can help spread the word, that'll help.
I had a question, Jacques. In a resource-based economy, how do you prevent one person from wanting more things than the next person?
You hear that? What's the question?
How do you prevent one person wanting more things than the next person?
That's due to scarcity. That's during the transition there will be trouble because there's still carryovers. If you don't know what that means, it's called neural lag. That means if you drive a car with a gear shift and suddenly you get a new car, you keep reaching for the gear shift. I'm sure you know if you've driven a car. So people can't quite let go of old ideas right away. With our new movies, we're going to make movies. So every time you go to a movie, when you come out, you're smarter than when you went in. That would be public service. So movies today do nothing but titillate. They don't really inform you. If you go to Disney World, it's entertainment. When you go to an exhibit in the future under the Venus Project, you come out smarter. You'll know how things work, how the mind works. You don't get that from Disney World. Okay? And then there's Mickey Mouse clubs. I'd be ashamed of that if I were Disney, to get kids to join the Mickey Mouse Club. Think about that.
Okay, we've got a question up here.
And soldiers, like I said before, are innocent killing machines. They're made that way by culture.
Yeah,
You don't want to kill anybody. There's no way to solve a problem.
I had one more question. You said that you think that the resource-based system can't eventuate until the old system crashes. Do you believe it's possible to engage with the current system, like for people, say, from the Zeitgeist movement, to engage and join political parties and help to affect change from within the current system?
In order to become a political party, you have to get a lot of money. And when you get a lot of money, you owe favors to a lot of people. And say Obama really wanted some change, theoretically, then if he tried anything, he probably would have been shot, you know? So they're really not interested in change. They're interested in keeping things as they are.
Most politicians are not elected to change the world. They're elected to keep things as they are. Think about it. Okay, you had your hand up, sir.
We have another question over here, Jack.
How would you inspire us to become personal activists?
Well, you join the Zeitgeist movement. That's the activist arm. And if you're an engineer, they get your name. If you're a surveyor or a chemist, they got you lined up. So on D-Day, if people ever say, let's build the Venus Project, we tap into that source. Does that make sense? Okay. Fresco makes no decisions. For example, it takes about 1,000 years to make 1 inch of topsoil. Nature. What we do is shave the soil before we build a city, put it in soil banks. The politicians don't know what value is. If we kill each other in nuclear war and say people come from another world and want to know about us, the only place you can find information is behind bank vaults, which are this thick. And all you'll find there is certificates of debt. You'll find papers with pictures of Washington or Jefferson, or not the history of medicine, science, chemistry. All of that should be stored behind vaults, not this bullshit money and debt certificates. Do you understand that?
Okay, we've got another question here.
Hi, Jack. How do you make someone believe in abundance instead of scarcity?
How do you what?
Make someone believe in abundance instead of scarcity. Instead of scarcity.
How do you what?
Make someone believe in abundance instead of scarcity.
You don't get them to believe in abundance. You show them motion pictures like, they ask questions, can a machine be smarter than the designer? That's what they ask me. Well, I know a little guy that designed a machine to pick up a freight train and empty it. He can't do that. Now, guys that design, or girls that design airplanes that move at 4,000 miles an hour, they can't keep up with it. So machines are always faster. You ever see Coke bottles moving on a machine? Well, the guy that designed that, he can't move those bottles that fast. So machines are always faster. If you don't understand me, when I was a kid, a pilot would look out of an airplane and say, I'm about a mile high. Today there's Doppler radar. It sends a signal down to the earth and back. And it says you're 4,000 or 5,250 feet, 6 inches off the ground. No human can do that. So it's not a machine takeover that I'm talking about. Machines would be assigned certain tasks, like about 9 months ago, computers were able to handle 1,000 trillion bits of information per second. No group of humans can do that. So we would have computers in Washington with their electrical tentacles into transportation, farming, production, crime, everything. So all you do is look at this chart, you get a whole picture of what's going on. When you do that with the Earth, if you put satellites around the Earth, you can see every plane in the air, every hurricane, the temperature all over the world. We don't need politicians sitting around, what do you think, what do you think? Today, we can sense those things. Do you understand me? So, when we say, is it a machine takeover? No. I'm telling you again, machines will be assigned tasks that humans can't handle. If a machine is 10,000 times faster than you, we don't want you there. You go out fishing and sailing. We make a lot of sailboats, a lot of bicycles, but you don't own anything in the future. It's there for your use. All you really want is not money. You want access to the necessities of life. So sometimes a girl sees a guy that's very wealthy, and that will give her access to the necessities of life. So people prostitute themselves because they need money. If you go to school, there are many young girls that prostitute themselves so they can go to college. You may owe $40,000 when you get out of college. In the Venus Project, there's no debt, no taxes, no money.
Okay, here's a question.
So you can study whatever you hope to study, yes.
Hi, Jacques. Just a question about, I guess, connectedness and disconnectedness in society these days. It seems that a lot of the problems that are in society are a result of disconnection between people. People having no empathy for each other, because it's not really taught in school. You know, it's not really promoted in society. You know, you go to school and you learn about what you can get, you know, what they fill you with and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, but they don't really sit kids down to talk about, you know, empathy for each other, you know, as such. And I find that that's the cause of a lot of the problems, you know, in the world, essentially. How can you hurt somebody else if you feel true empathy for them and you understand that they're made of the same stuff as you are and have the same potential that you have? You know, you can sort of start to connect. Is that something that, you know, you're going to, you know, be able to factor into a resource-based economy in the schools and things like that, and in terms of the learning? Because, you know, we hear a lot about, you know, results, you know, the way you can build cities and the way you can, you know, plan things and all the technical stuff.
I really don't understand your question.
Oh, sorry. It's very hard to phrase it. Yeah.
What is the question?
Yeah. Yeah, psychology, basically. It's like the heart of psychology. You know, what do we teach our children in, say, a school?
Okay, you don't teach your children anything. They are given seeds, and they put it in the ground. And since they can't write when they're very young, they draw. They say its shaft is coming up. Now the leaves are coming on. Then we say to the kids, stop putting water on the plants. And the kids realize that plants can't grow unless the sun hits them, water, temperature. In school they teach you that plants grow. They can't grow unless they have sunlight, temperature, soil, nutrients, same with people. You don't see a wire connected to people, but they are connected to nature. They're connected to all things, but they don't realize that. They think they're independent, disconnected. And if we violate the oceans, dump nerve gas in and don't care, dump crap in, shit, all that stuff, you will eventually pay for that. And it's not the law of karma. It's just that you're lousing up the environment and it's going to get back at you.
Jacques, we have another question up here.
Hi, I was wondering, do you think religion has a place in the Venus Project, or does it need to be abolished completely for the Venus Project to be successful?
You can't ban religion. It will go underground. What you can do is teach kids better ways of understanding the world and why things are the way they are. not because people are good or bad, or because God is mad at you, or because you didn't throw your brother-in-law into a volcano because it's erupting or something. So you find better explanations of how things work in the world and how one relates to one another. But that can be taught in many different ways.
We've got one more question just up here.
Yes.
Hey, Jack. Obviously, the first step in getting the Venus project sort of off the ground is to actually build it and show people that it'll actually work. Like, how would you go about actually the first steps of actually building this thing so people can see it and go, wow, that works, why can't we follow?
Roxanne, can you, what's the
How do
question?
you go about the first steps of building this?
Here's how you know about the first steps of building a city. You don't build a city. What you do is a survey of the area. And if it has so much arable land, so much water, 5,000 people can live there. If you put too many people in a scarce area, you're going to have disease, malformation, hatred, and crime. So if you learn what the carrying capacity is of different regions, then your population should coincide with the carrying capacity of the earth, not Fresco's opinion. Everybody doesn't know what that means? You can't put 4,000 people in an airliner. It'll never get off the ground. It has so much wing area and can lift so many people. That's what I mean. Living in accordance with what nature can carry, not the ideas of Fresco or anything. So when we design a city in the future, or a dam, we have one group design that city, and we have another group to give us the negative effects of a dam. People never heard of that. They study the negative retroaction of anything you build. So if you build a dam, it might provide a lot of electric power. But 5 years from now, you've cut out the little tributaries, the little rivers, and the beavers stop building dams. The water table drops, trees die on the mountainside. So we do a positive and negative study of any project before we engage in it. Do you understand that?
I think we've got just two more questions, haven't we? Okay, one over here.
Hi, Jack. I think your idea sounds really good. There's just one thing I'm wondering about the resource economy, to understand how it really works. It's about incentive in a non-profit society. Because if everyone has access for free to all the things that are being produced, but someone has to work to produce these things, what incentive will people have to work if they get the same ration of meat, whether if they work or if they do nothing?
Okay.
The incentive is no war, no poverty, no hunger, free access to medical care, free access to education, an open society that way. If that's not incentive enough for people to be reinforced continuously, I really don't know what is. We're afraid of people who have incentive for money. If you go to a doctor and they say, you need your kidney out, we don't know if they need to pay off their yacht or you really need your kidney out. So whenever money is in this scenario, the thing that kills incentive most is minimum wage. People have incentive for the things they want to do. Kids have incentive when they're born. They're curious about everything, but we kill it with being a cog in the wheel and not teaching kids how to be creative and cooperative. So incentive would be tremendous in the future. Martin Luther King didn't march down the streets because there's $40,000 put in his bank account to be hit over the head and thrown in jail. When people believe in things, they have a lot of incentive.
Gandhi didn't march for money. Nobody said, there's 50,000 bucks in the Swiss bank if you march for freedom from England. He marched because he believed in it. That's the kind of people I'm interested in. I'll just take two more questions.
I think we're up to the last question now, actually. Last question? Yep.
Last question is simply, have you enjoyed your trip to Brisbane?
What was that?
Have you enjoyed your trip to Brisbane?
Yes. And if you leave here and you do nothing, nothing will happen. The earth will continue to get polluted and the same values will dominate if you do nothing. So I have no power, I'd like you to know, none at all. I have no heavy finances or anything like that. Roxanne and I have no power at all. Depends on what you do when you leave here. How soon? If you do nothing, again, nothing will happen. So I want to thank all of you for coming and the opportunity to present these concepts. And if there's ever anything you don't understand, email us. And if I say something that doesn't sound acceptable, say, where can I get information? How do I know that's true? Don't believe anything I say until I tell you where to get the source. Get The Tyranny of Words, if you really want to get a good start, by Stuart Chase. Now, you might be able to find it on the internet. Thanks again.